www.MVRemix.com.
I'm hoping this is how it's going to go because I just got this from someone.
Oh, yeah.
So if it doesn't work, could be a bit of a problem.
Well, it appears to be moving.
Yeah, which that's got to be a good sign.
And the seconds are ticking.
Seconds are ticking, but my question would be, should you be seeing any kind of level come up?
I have
Do you
no
know?
clue. I don't think so.
Okay. I don't see where that would go.
The mini disc which I had to interview last year,
yeah.
Someone broke it.
Well, I find those things rarely last much more than a year anyway.
Yeah.
It's like an imperfect technology, or at least they've built imperfection into it, maybe, so you keep buying them or something. But
yeah,
I use them a lot. They're expensive, but I use them a lot. I often use them for my show, and honestly, all the years I've been using them, I don't think I've had one that's lasted a year yet. And sure, I'm using it a lot, but I'm not putting unusual wear and tear on it. I treat it really well, and I only use it for that. I don't use it as a Walkman, so your average person would probably, use it more than I do. And because I would use it for like an hour and a half every day. Well, maybe that would be pretty normal, I suppose. Yeah. But anyway, it's never lasted more than a year.
Yeah. I mean, it never really caught on as much as everyone thought it would.
No, it didn't, did it? But, yeah, so.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
All right, let's see. How does it feel to fascinate people through your creativity?
Oh, well, I guess I don't know. I mean, if that's happening, if that happens, that is basically the best reward that I could get from this job, because I don't do it to make money, and I have no expectations of making money, and I mean, and to be completely honest with you, I'm not really making any money, and I'm certainly not interested in fame and having my photograph taken and all that kind of stuff. And I figure, being completely realistic about like the kind of music I make and where I'm taking my influences from and so on, for as much of a nice fantasy as it would be to be kind of regarded as I don't know, like you see, like I just bought a Rolling Stone magazine today, and they had it's a special issue called like the 50 most important people in rock and roll ever, or something like that. And that's like another kind of perk that people could aspire to as a musician, to kind of be influential or something like that. But to be influential on that level, to be kind of regarded in that way and recognized by like Rolling Stone and shit like that, and that's a whole other thing that like realistically I don't necessarily see myself fitting into. I think there's been like lots of great musicians that maybe deserved to be regarded as great, that kind of fell through the cracks, and it's kind of for those who know kind of situation. So kind of short of all that stuff, that I figure the most you can hope for is just to turn someone on, like to catch someone's attention, and then as an extra bonus from there, if you really get them thinking, or if you inspire another person, because I do what I do having received that from someone else. So if you can pass it on, that just kind of, to me, almost feels like the point. That's like the real, justice of doing this. And it kind of gives purpose to it, because, we all at one point or another get a little bit philosophical about what we do with our life. And it can be pretty easy to be hard on yourself as a musician. Like, well, I'm not saving any lives here and blah, blah, blah. But you can't really, discount the importance of, stimulating someone, or giving them something to think about, or a reason to feel good, or even just giving someone the feeling that they're not alone, like if they can identify with your work or something like that. So if I've taken something positive from someone else, then to me it just feels kind of, at the risk of sounding like a hippie or something, like cosmically just to kind of pass that on, right, to someone else.
So kind of sparking from that, you were talking about unknown names influencing people and larger names influencing people. Last time we spoke, you mentioned Johnny Cash.
Right.
Now, what's your favorite Johnny Cash song? Or favorite songs?
That's hard to say. you know, some of the pleasure that I get from Johnny Cash can be a little bit guilty because, you know, I've been pretty like vocally critical of a lot of, you know, like gangster hip hop and stuff like that. But then admittedly, like a lot of my favorite Johnny Cash stuff are like the murder ballads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There a year or two ago, he kind of put together these compilations that he compiled himself of his music put into 3 themes. It was love, God, and murder. And I ran out and picked up that murder one, you know? And so like a lot of my favorite stuff is there. And in the last few years, it's been particularly interesting to hear what he's done with covers, which technically speaking aren't his songs. Like everyone talks about Hurt from the last album, which clearly is like a pretty, you know, genius musical moment. But the thing that really surprised me the most on that album was the song that Sting wrote for him. I mean, Sting of all people, who would have thought? And it's a murder ballad, that song, I Hung My Head. I really, really like that song a lot. And part of me is, you know, telling me not to because it's Sting. And who would have thought? And for there to be a line, I borrowed Jeb's rifle. Sting wrote that?
Yeah.
Sting's talking about a guy named Jeb. You know, it seems very weird, but it's a great song, and it comes across, and like clearly he wrote it for Johnny Cash, and it works very well as a Johnny Cash song, you know. But you know, and there's something like really kind of thrillingly sick about like Delia's Gone from, you know, the album before that or whatever. And I don't know, you know, I mean, you know, I've always kind of liked everything that he's had to say, and that he's always kind of been like a righteous and God-fearing man, and you know, he writes great love songs too. So I wouldn't want to strictly focus on some of that, you know, kind of tough outlaw stuff. But I mean, it is pretty badass, and is, you know, contributed to his whole, you know, myth and icon status in a pretty big way. So, but I don't know, like from that last album, Give My Love to Rose, inspired the song Tired Out on my album, that he, you know, wrote, you know, a love song that was like so sweet, you know, like that, you know, and that gave me a lot of inspiration too. So I don't know, it's when you're talking about someone like that, it's, you know, you're probably going to give a different answer depending on the time of day, you know. And his catalog is so unbelievably vast. I was in a record store in Calgary a few days ago, and I went through the whole store like I normally do, and the biggest section they had in the entire store was the Johnny Cash section. I mean, that's a pretty daunting task to say, you know, even to pick a couple, you know, because it's just like, you know, tons and tons and tons of, you know, great stuff there. So he's one of those few people, kind of like say like Duke Ellington and you know, Bob Dylan and a few others, that you could devote like a whole life just to collecting his work. And slowly but surely, I haven't taken the full plunge like I have with, like, say, Woody Guthrie or Bob Dylan or a few others, of trying to accumulate everything, but slowly but surely it's, you know, it's building.
With that, I remember last time we spoke, basically you told me about how you have a lot of material which you have in very rare form of your own work.
Right.
For example, maybe you did a few 7-inches or something like that. No one can find them. What have you been working on recently? Have you been keeping your own material very much to yourself and just distributing a little, or?
Well, an interesting thing as far as all that is concerned from the last few years is the work that I did while I was living in France and doing collaborations with French artists, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there, and most of that would only be available in France and maybe, you know, Belgium or something. And then, you know, there was the obvious now, I suppose, side project of the Sleep No More album that I did with DJ Signify and Sage Francis, which I think might have came out yesterday or something.
I think it's coming out.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I know there was supposed to be a release party on Monday in New York, and I couldn't make it. So if there was a release party Monday, that would suggest to me that the record's out or ready to come out. And then there's basically been like a few other projects kind of slowly in the works. I mean, I've been touring almost nonstop for 2 years, so it's hard to find time to just sit down and work on other ideas. So plus, obviously, it's a priority to, work on the next proper album. So I've already begun demoing that. And with some of the loose ends that I've had floating around, I've kind of released a song quietly every month as part of the enhanced component of the last record, this buck a month thing. But, have begun chipping away at things for another Sebutones album. DJ Signify and I have been continuing to, work on some other stuff without real plans as to what we're going to do with it. And a few other little things here and there. There's always lots of ideas that kind of pop up and then, nothing ends up quite getting done with them. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff, kind of laying around. Plus I've been, getting some live recordings together lately because it's been in the back of my mind to someday do a live album, because my show with my band, when I play with my band, is a whole other thing, and there's completely different versions of like some of the older songs that are done with the band that I want people to hear. So there's a lot of stuff I just have to figure out what to do with it, and I like the idea of just kind of slipping it out there on the internet or whatever else. But yeah, it's around, it's floating around. But it came to my attention recently that there's a website out there that I didn't know about called stolenbass.com, bass with 2 S's. That's a area where people kind of buy, sell, and trade obscurities from, my catalog or whatever, which is interesting. One of those strangely flattering things.
What is never told to you.
Yeah. So I've actually never checked it out, but I know all sorts of weird things, float around there. Yeah.
You've been saying that you've been touring for a couple of years, and I saw you perform last time you were here.
Right.
It was a really unique stage show. What influenced the way you perform on stage, or which artists did that for you?
The first person that comes to mind right away is Jacques Brel, who's, kind of a famous icon in the world of French music, like chanson française, but he's actually from Belgium. He's like one of the best performers I ever saw. I never saw him with my own eyes, but like on video and so on. And, he's the main one. I mean, I'm basically just thinking about him when I'm up there and, essentially just trying to imitate him while I'm up there. But, I've been inspired from everyone from Brian Ferry and Willie Nelson, Tom Waits, of course, with the whole kind of storytelling aspect I've always found really interesting. Vic Chestnut, all kinds of stuff. I mean, and sometimes it doesn't come from like musical places, and in fact, sometimes I'm more like inspired by ideas, and I just trying to like go into some kind of psychological mindset in an effort to try to create some kind of energy up there, because I find the best shows, the ones you remember, is when there's this energy about it that you can't quite pin down. You don't know quite what to call it. You don't know where it comes from, but there's almost like this tangible sense of something in the room. And so how is that created? Where does that come from? And I've stumbled on it a couple of times by accident, like when I'm having particularly bad days. I'm going through hard times when I'm really not in the mood to perform. And then you can feel it yourself that there's some kind of like thing there. And then you go out and it comes across. And interestingly, that often results in the best shows. Like when you don't want to do it sometimes. So I've thought a lot about that and how you can channel that. It's like putting lightning in a jar or something like that. But the main one is Jacques Brel. I got to tell you, you know, recently, because it was the anniversary of his death last year, and there was Jacques Brel celebrations all over the place. So a 3 DVD set was released, just called Brel, I believe, and totally worth looking for. Although some of the best footage I've ever seen of him wasn't on, you know, that collection, but good Lord, he's like, you know, one of the most, you know, magnetic performers I've ever seen, for sure.
Kind of going into a different realm, coming onto Canada and going on to politics.
Okay.
What do you think of Paul Martin?
Well, I don't know, because, you know, well, first of all, granted, I must say that I've spent most of my time in the last couple of years in Europe, and sometimes I get a little out of touch with what's going on here at home, which is distressing sometimes. And when you are abroad, it's much easier to know what's going on with like American politics, because internationally more people are concerned, and so few people care what's going on here in Canada outside Canada, which in a way is great and in a way is a shame, depending on, you know, the situation, I suppose. But when I heard about this whole, you know, fiasco and controversy with, you know, the kind of bad money stuff a while ago, right away my thoughts were like, okay, well, you know, screw this guy, blah, 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 whatever. But then on the other hand, really, you know, not surprised whatsoever. And I think it's a like one of those situations where somebody, you know, gets caught. But like, is it really a surprise to anyone to find out that any given, like, you know, government or party or politician is like corrupt in some way, and that, like, you know, there's like, you know, bad money floating around or whatever? I mean, I don't want to like give up on politics and our leaders and stuff like that, but this shit just doesn't surprise me anymore at all. And, you know, all in all, I kind of liked Chrétien, you know? I mean, maybe not all of his decisions as a politician, but kind of as a guy. He was kind of like a tough customer, wasn't he? He didn't really take any crap off anyone. And there was that time whenever he put that kid in a headlock once or whatever, and you know, he was interviewed last year asking if after he, you know, left office, would he try smoking pot. He said, yeah, I think so, you know. And I was like, that's kind of cool or whatever. I don't smoke pot myself, and I don't think that's cool, but that he kind of has this regular Joe kind of vibe about him I always kind of liked. And when I see photos of Paul Martin, and maybe I'm just looking at the wrong photos or seeing the wrong footage, but he always has a bit of like a deer in the headlights kind of thing. Like the guy looks like nervous or something to me, and makes me nervous in turn. So I don't know. One thing that's really interesting when you look at what's been going on in Canadian politics in the last while and the way people have been screwing up, things are starting to look better and better, arguably anyway, for the NDP party, which is kind of fascinating, and well, it just kind of makes you, you know, wonder and think. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to watch how things go, and when the next election is called,
Will you be voting in that election?
Yeah, I think it's important to vote, and I don't like to get too attached to a party and say, well, you know, I'm an NDP for life and that's it. Too many people do that, and that's kind of what, you know, holds us back a lot of times, is when people don't really care about the issues and just vote based on, you know, loyalties to different things. You know, you see that in the part of the country where I'm from a lot out east, where there's people, you know, your liberals or your PCs, and, you know, they fight with each other. It doesn't matter. You're just down for life, and there's still people out there who worship Trudeau and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So, you know, I voted for different, you know, parties in the past. I just vote based on, you know, who I think is kind of the best candidate. But I'll also admit to you that I'm guilty of this, just like, you know, probably plenty of other people. But I don't know what it is. Maybe it is because of like the world stage thing. But I've probably followed American politics a little closer in the last bunch of years than I have Canadian politics. But then, like, as far as Canadian politics goes, there is the whole other issue. It's good and, you know, interesting to look at the national picture, but we have a lot of unique situations, and I don't live there anymore. But like the Maritimes, like, you know, Eastern Canada, is still struggling so hard compared to the rest of the country. I mean, I was reading stuff about that in the paper today, how new budgets are about to come down like, you know, for New Brunswick and PEI, and it's always been hard for, like, you know, Newfoundland and Nova Scotia as well. Like, it's looking really harsh, like really bad. Taxes getting hiked way up again, and you know, we've been hurting and had that struggle forever, you know, and I'm hoping and praying for the day when something there gets turned around. But most of my concerns about Canadian politics are the politics from where I come from, and in Nova Scotia in particular. And sadly, you know, you just get the sense that it's just not a priority for a lot of the leaders, and that's unfortunate. I can understand it when you got, like, you know, provinces like, you know, Ontario and Alberta that, you know, generate so much money and have so much industry, and that has to be really important. But good Lord, I mean, you know, things are, you know, borderline catastrophic in, you know, Nova Scotia. I mean, you can't just forget about that. You can't forget about a whole, you know, a whole chunk, like a whole big chunk of the country. So that's kind of where my heart lies. And I haven't really seen anyone yet, except for Alexa McDonough from the NDP party, who really does seem concerned. Her heart really does seem to be in Atlantic Canada. And so I kind of can't help but, you know, well, like her because of that, you know. So I don't know. Could talk about that forever.
Do you follow hockey?
Yes and no. It kind of comes and goes in waves. Again, it's hard to follow it in Europe, and then, like a lot of people, I do have the tendency to get wrapped up in the post-season. But lately, I've been kind of grossed out by professional hockey with what's gone on with, like, Todd Bertuzzi there a little while ago, and then a day or two later, there was I caught it really quickly, just like on the airplane or something like that. But there was another really horrible, gross, violent incident that I remember seeing happen kind of right in front of the net, like a few nights ago, like right after that, right, you know, when this was in the headlines and really fresh, another just maiming, you know. And the NHL, and I don't want to say hockey because it's good to separate hockey from the NHL, which a lot of people don't do. To me, hockey is a bunch of guys getting together, you know, on a pond on Sunday afternoon or whatever. That's hockey, you know. The NHL is in a mess and really needs to clean up its act, and it's been really shooting itself in the foot a lot lately and making itself look bad. And, you know, if it's losing viewers and supporters and whatever else, well, good, if that's what it takes for them to, you know, kind of pull up their socks a little bit. And you know what, frankly, and count me among them right now. I mean, it is a turnoff, like, to see that, you know, with the whole, you know, Bertuzzi thing, and for him to essentially been slapped on the wrist, as far as I'm concerned, for what, to me, I mean, you know, some of these things that you see happen, I think the argument can be made, and has been made, for, like, you know, criminal things happen. I mean, otherwise, outside of that arena, you can't do that. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't destroy people's bodies and lives and say, well, you're going to have to miss a couple games for it or whatever. To me, it's deplorable and pretty, you know, disgusting or whatever. So I've been kind of turned off by it. So lately, kind of by choice, I haven't been following it very much.
What do you see within your next year?
Well, I'm working on these 2 books, and it's one of my kind of most exciting goals to get those published. And like I said, I've begun demoing the next album and then touring nonstop, kind of looking forward to maybe a little bit of time off, maybe a few weeks in, like, June or something like that. But it's just a whole lot of that. I'm kind of interested in looking into the possibility of doing some interesting collaborations and with artists outside the world of hip hop, but I don't know, and there's no definite, you know, leads there or anything. But, you know, all in all, you know, just a whole lot more work, but, you know, with the asterisk beside that, pertaining to the books. I'm really excited about the books.
What are the books about?
One's a novel, and it's fiction, but kind of biographical, and it's kind of based in Paris. I started writing it when I was living there, and the other's, for lack of a better term, a poetry book. I don't really like that word, but, you know, verse, whatever you want to call it. And I'll probably include some song lyrics in it, but it's mostly just, you know, stuff that I've been writing, and an opportunity or an excuse, if you want to look at it that way, to just write in a different way and about some different things that, you know, don't normally get addressed in the songs or whatever else. So, so and I got some good leads. I'm kind of in the process right now of kind of, you know, looking at publishers and talking to some people about it. So, you know, looking good. I think it'll see the light of day, hopefully before too long.
Best of luck.
Thanks.
All right, so in closing, do you have any last words to your fans or potential fans that are going to be reading this?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because I had something on my mind today. And I was hoping that someone today might ask me that question. So this doesn't really have much to do with anything, but it is something that's been on my mind that I want to say. Because I'm very interested, you know, in the world of music and what it means to be a musician, and for that matter, I suppose, an artist and everything. And it's interesting to follow it, and I do find it, you know, interesting, even if morbidly interesting sometimes, to follow what's going on, like even in the world of pop music. And so, a question that I ask all the time, and that I would want everyone else to ask, and I find it surprising and, you know, a bit dismaying, if that's a word, that people don't ask more. So that if you hear a new song and you ask yourself, have I heard anything like this before? And the answer to that question is yes. Then what's the point? What is the point? And, you know, I'll hear a new record that, like, everyone's really excited about, or I'll read, like, a review of a record that everyone's, you know, over the moon about, and then I'll hear it, and I'll say, look, I've heard this before, and this is exactly the same as this, and I know where this comes from, and, like, this record to me doesn't really represent an improvement on The Clash, which seems to be kind of what, you know, what line they're falling into, or whatever else. And, like, what is the point? What is the point? What is the point? You know, why is it good enough for the musicians and for a lot of the listeners out there to just take more of the same shit over and over and over again? I mean, I've heard it. I've heard most of it all a million times before. And, you know, I try to concern myself every time out, as a matter of fact, with just about every song I ever make, to do something that I haven't heard before, just try to make some kind of contribution to it, for better or worse. I'm not saying that, like, every song that I've ever made has been, like, you know, a gold nugget or anything like that. But, like, the fact that some attempt is being made at least, you know, trying out, like, a new idea, I would hope that, you know, that there would be something to be said for that. But unfortunately, it's that very effort that seems to have held me back the most. Because it seems that for people to understand, they need to be able to, like, relate it to something else. And how goddamn boring is that? So maybe I'm just making a shitty statement about how people seem to have their heads up their ass. But honestly, aren't we looking for something else? Isn't our ideas really dead? Like, and don't people want them? Like, to me, I don't care what genre it comes from or what, I get excited when I hear something new. You know, and I want it. And even if it's like 30 seconds of a song, I mean, show me something. You know, I mean, I would like to think that that's got to be, like, the point in some regard. And so I don't know really what the point of me saying that is. I mean, hopefully just to encourage people to be, like, curious or open-minded, or just, like, to continue to look, or for that matter, like, I guess it's another way of saying that it's important to kind of educate yourself, you know, like, you know, I don't care what kind of music you're into, go out and pick up a Hank Williams record. Even if you hate country music, you know, do it. You owe it to yourself, you know, like, you should, you know, pick up a Skip James record, pick up a Roxy Music record, or a Beach Boys record if you've never done it, or a Buzzcocks record, whatever it is. You know, if you're really, like, a fan of music, you know, you should kind of know about these things and arm yourself and, you know, just expand. And it's upsetting to me, like, just how few people do that, but how, on the other hand, they're willing to take, like, the same thing over and over and over and over again. It blows my mind, and I think about it and say it in different ways all the time. But
yeah, I wasn't really a Johnny Cash fan just because I never heard it. It wasn't the type of thing I thought I'd endeavour to get into. Then around his death, all my friends started playing his material a lot more.
Right.
So all of a sudden, I've gotten into his material as well.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a hidden gem because of the fact that it has a stigma that it is Johnny Cash and he is this genre.
Right, yeah.
And so, yeah.
But, you know, there is like the temptation that a lot of people have to say, well, I'm not going to do that because it's kind of cliche of me to do that. And sure, right now it's kind of like en vogue to be into Johnny Cash because he passed away and blah, blah. But like, we shouldn't deny ourselves when something gets the praise or whatever that it deserves. It's good to be able to see through crap, and if something is like hyped without really deserving it, then fine. Like, I'll avoid, you know, hype like anybody else will. But like, you know, to deny yourself, you know, take a look at any given list of like the greatest songwriters of all time. Usually those lists agree with each other, you know, and like you'll always see in these lists of great albums, you'll always see Miles Davis, you'll always see the Beach Boys, you'll always see the Beatles, you'll always see probably Nirvana, you know, there's a handful that are always there. So, you know, why under any circumstances like deny yourself of that if clearly there's something to be learned there? I mean, why is it that everyone seems to agree upon that? I just think it's good if you want to, like, you know, educate yourself, if you really care about music, to say, well, okay, well, let me see what this is all about as far as Paul McCartney is concerned. Let me get a little context here and understand what his contribution was and all those things. I mean, I think it's really valuable, you know, to do that. So, you know, hype and concerns about that, it can be like a dicey prospect, and we all kind of hate it when the things we love become trendy. But I think the real test of like someone who has conviction is someone who can like ride that out. You were a fan in the first place. Can you stick it out while it's kind of trendy to do it, and then will you stick by when that trend is past? You know. So you know, that's the real mark. And you know, I was a little bit cursed, especially I saw this a lot in the UK actually when my record came out. The fact that there was like a bit of country influence on it, because it was kind of chic and it's seen as ultra chic in the UK to have that influence, and so people were like, oh, well, isn't that, you know, convenient and trendy? And I was like, oh, God almighty, you know, like, you know, I grew up in Nova Scotia, for Christ's sakes, in the woods. Like, the only real musical heroes we have out there is Hank Snow and Anne Murray. This is what I grew up with, you know, like, this is what I got. This is who I am. Like, I'm not just saying that I grew up in a small town. I honest to God did. You know, it's not me trying to be, you know, ironic or funny or cool. So there's going to be a tough time, whatever it is you're into. And a lot of people will just abandon it, say, screw that, you know, it's not precious anymore, so I'll drop it. But, you know, it's always, you know, just an extra kind of plus and a mark of like some kind of like, you know, fortitude or integrity of a person if they can, you know, have the guts to say, yes, you know, I am a fan of this even now, and I will be, and I was before, or whatever. So, you know, just, you know, if I was going to give like advice to people, especially like young people, like what you like. Don't let anyone else tell you what to like, and don't ever be made to feel that it's not okay to like what you like. And, you know, and believe in it. Have your reasons for liking the things that you like and stick by them, you know. I mean, there's a lot of good music out there. I buy music every single day. I mean, you know, let it be about the music and not about, you know, the hype or the fashion statement that goes with it. Just let it be about the music, for the love of God, you know. And whatever, maybe the Strokes are trendy, but maybe they make good records too. And, you know, maybe it's obvious to like the Beatles, but, you know, listen to Revolver. I mean, you know, there's just certain things that you shouldn't deny. I guess we're getting the civil.
Okay, perfect. Well, that was the last question, so.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we got the chance to
Yeah.
to hook up, you know.
Yeah.